Now, when you start talking about Shakespeare and you start talking about Henry V, there's all kinds of different directions you can go. Because you can go back and you can look at what Henry V was like in real life, and if he was like the leader that Shakespeare made him into in the play, and you could talk about Shakespeare himself and the rumors and the myths and the legends that circulate his life and his legacy, because there's all kinds of questions about Shakespeare. I mean, did he actually write all of his plays? Was he more than one person? Was he a soldier at some point? How did he know all this stuff about the military and what it was like to be a soldier? Was his vocabulary 10 times what a normal person is? There's all kinds of, like I said, rumor and myth about Shakespeare. But instead of talking about all that and the conjecture and the hypothetical questions, I would rather talk about something that is known, something that we have today. And those are the words. Words from the play Henry V, which, yes, was written by Shakespeare. And I'm going to tell you, don't be scared and don't be intimidated by that. I mean it. Don't be scared and don't be intimidated by Shakespeare because you don't understand it. Because you can't. And the fact of the matter is, no one can. At least at first. It's not possible to understand Shakespeare out of the gate. It doesn't work. It's another language. It is another language. You can't be expected to understand it. It's written in something called early modern English. You know, we speak English. This is early modern English, which is just a transition from something called Middle English. And if you go on YouTube and you look up Middle English and you have somebody read, a real common one is if you look at the Lord's Prayer in Middle English, you can barely understand it. Parts of it you can't understand, parts of the words you'll recognize. But when you get to early modern English, now it's a step closer, but it still is, it's different. It's a different type of language. And there's archaic words and there's obsolete words. And there's words that Shakespeare just made up. He would make up words factually. And the patterns of speech are different and the idioms are different and the references are all historical. And so if you don't have a grasp on those mythological references and historical references and biblical references, then it doesn't have the meaning that it's supposed to have. So you can't expect just to open up Shakespeare and be able to understand it. Now, this is actually the opposite of what I often say, because to me, you know, you hear me say all the time that what makes English so important is that you can make things very simple and very understandable by everybody. So then why is it important? Why should we read it? Why should we try and understand it? And the answer to that question is actually very simple. Shakespeare had something. He had something. He had some understanding, some knowledge, some insight into the human mind that is not normal. It's not normal. He understood people deeply. He understood relationships, he understood leadership, he understood love, and he understood war. And I don't know how he did this, and I don't know why he did, but he did. And on top of that, he had this talent, he had this gift to translate that knowledge into words. And this is important because in the late 1500s and the early 1600s, this is a whole nother deal. There's no special effects. There's no close-up shots of an actor. There's no stunt man. There's no CGI. Everything has to be contained in the words. All the emotion and all the feeling and all the action and all the nature of human beings. It all has to be captured in the words. And the words that Shakespeare uses are heavy. And they're pregnant. They're pregnant with so much more meaning than what's on the surface. They're filled with depth and knowledge that you have to scrape away and uncover to figure out what they're even talking about.